WDN. A monumental week at the Capitol as lawmakers on both sides of the aisle came together to send Governor Evers a sweeping bill to overhaul local funding to governments and schools. That's not all. CBS Today Capitol correspondent Emily Fannin has you covered on some of the other top political stories of the week.
After many months and a lot of closed-door negotiations, lawmakers reached their final hurdle in passing the sweeping bill to overhaul funding for local governments, and that was also paired with a big education package for an increase for public and private schools. Now, what was important is that we saw a lot of mixed votes on this as well, because in general, a lot of lawmakers had to make a tough decision whether to vote for or against it, because it came with a lot of restrictions for all municipalities, but also specifically Milwaukee. We saw 6 Democrats in the Senate join Republicans in passing the bill because ahead of the vote, there was some uncertainty that they were going to have enough Republicans to pass it on their own. But in general, I mean, the other big headline here, JR, is how much of a lifeline this will give now Milwaukee and Milwaukee County by allowing them to increase their sales tax by going to the city and county board, which they would have to pass by a 2/3 vote.
So with the vote, typically speaking, the Senate, they have a rule of 17. You have to have 17 Republican votes to pass anything. Only had 15 for this bill. They needed Democratic support to get across the finish line. It shows you that the governor was working Democratic members of the Senate to get on board, make sure this thing could get through. 2, with the votes now for the sales taxes, there are a couple of provisions added quietly to the bill through the amendment. So the amendment largely reflects what Evers worked out with leaders we talked about last week. However, there are 2 new provisions. One of them is there is now a deadline 10 years out for Milwaukee to hit the numbers for police and firefighters. That wasn't there before. 2, there's an extra cut Milwaukee would get for failing to hit these requirements for local law enforcement. It's going to complicate things for local officials about, okay, you're adding another burden on us. Oh, by the way, there's a Brewers package coming down the line for American Family Field. We're probably looking for a state or local contribution to that deal. They're going to say, okay, wait a second, you want more money from us when you're doing this to us. That's going to cause some heartburn among members of those common councils and the county board when it comes to those votes. And
when they're going to take those votes is really up in the air. But what I've heard from people talking about with local leaders in the area and some aldermen is that they want to get this over with because of what's ahead next year. I mean, specifically, the Republican National Convention. If you have an increased sales tax, that is more money for the city and county. And, oh, by the way, Mayor Cavalier Johnson and David Crowley are up for re-election next year. So they want to get this way past and out of the way before all of this happens next year. Also, part of this big package, we cannot not talk about education. I mean, it was just a week ago that we only got a few details about this. But basically, overall, the big argument was from public school advocates and teacher unions who are very buddy-buddy with the governor. They asked him to veto this plan because it would give a little bit more of an increase in payments to voucher schools over public schools.
Yeah, well, one interesting thing came out of the hearing was this argument, well, we could have gotten this from Scott Walker. And that's not true, because this $1 billion going into K-12 education includes more than $650 million in property taxes. Remember, there's these big pots of money for schools. One pot, the general school aids, includes a mix of state aid and property taxes. The more state aid, less you can raise from property taxes. The way they've structured this allows a big property tax increase. However, there's a caveat. Mark Bourne, the co-chair of the Finance Committee, has said there's more to come on property taxes. They have a tax package coming this coming week. That will fill in the blanks, because if you are a Republican right now, you're going, okay, wait a second, you're going to allow my property taxes to go for schools? Where is my tax cut? That's going to be here from the conservative base. It better be a good tax cut to offset these things. All we're talking about is spending increases. Where is my tax cut?
And that goes right into our look ahead topic, because on Tuesday, the Joint Finance Committee, of what you and I are hearing, is that they want to wrap up their work on Tuesday. But what the hang-up was this week is over funding for UW system after Assembly Speaker Robin Vos threatened to cut not just $32 million. He later said he would want to cut even more money for diversity, equity, inclusion programs known as DEI. This has been a long-standing riff here in the Capitol and has been widely talked about. Governor Evers threatened to veto the entire budget if those cuts were included, and that is the big question ahead. But they also have to still finish up a lot of their work on Tuesday, which could be a long night.
So with the governor's veto threat, how hard is he going to push that? If it's 30 million cut or 28, does he say, okay, I can sign that? If he threatens to cut, if it's at 32 and they cut 32 and he signs anyway, Why would Republicans be worried about his veto threat going forward? There's a lot of dynamics at play with that. I'm fascinated to watch how it plays out. And if the Senate Republicans agree with what Assembly Republicans want to do with that size of a cut for UW.
All right, that will do it for this week. Thanks for joining us.
It's still not known if Donald Trump